everybody. This is Enjoy the Bourbon. My name's Eric.
My name's John.
Today we're here to talk about bourbon and some different ways to drink bourbon. So there's a lot of misconceptions out there. We're not really going to be those people that are going to be hard and fast to tell you that there's one correct or wrong way to drink bourbon. But what we are going to do is show you a few different ways, some of the different things that we have to chill bourbon. And so I guess with that, we'll probably just get right into it. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about was ice. So we have a few different bourbons here. Would definitely drink any of these bourbons. That's why we have them here, because we actually went out to the store and bought them. There are a few though that I would never consider putting ice in, just because of the rarity, the flavor profiles that are there already with the bourbon. To me, I don't usually care to add a lot of ice to my bourbon drinks. Even if it's mixed, which is another rare thing for me. I'm more of a bourbon purist, if you will. But John actually has this neat contraption though for those who would like to use ice. Of course, you can use ice cubes just from your freezer or your freezer. But what this contraption is, I'll let John kind of talk through it.
So this thing's awesome. It actually ends up creating little ice balls, like these kind of really big tennis ball sized things of ice. Let me see, I already made some here in this plastic bag. Put it in there so you can see it's a big ball of ice, right? So the way this thing works is you pull this little rubber thing off and you'll fill it up with water, and then you push this down. You fill it up, there's a little line to fill it up to. You push this down, put it in the freezer. Takes a little longer than a normal ice cube because it's a lot bigger. But when they come out, you get these nice big balls, and the advantage of that versus getting a smaller ice cube is with the big ball, it kind of melts really slowly. So it puts some water into your bourbon, which can open up the flavor. And that slow melting actually is better than when you have a bunch of ice cubes that just kind of disintegrate really fast.
True. Now, and for me, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, I'm not usually one that will put ice in my bourbon. There are a few choices here. Like if your bourbon is a little bit warmer, maybe it's a warmer day. Like we're lucky, we're out camping. It's really nice and comfortable out today. I think the high is like 65. So our bourbons are at a really good room temperature, if you will. But if you were really looking to cool your bourbon off kind of quickly without adding ice to it, in my bourbon glass here that I've already began sampling, I have rocks or cubes of stone. You put those, they come in a nice little satchel. You can pick these up really just about anywhere, Amazon or at your liquor store. What you do is you freeze them, and then when you're ready, you just plop them into your glass. The advantage again is that it chills your bourbon down without adding any water to it. So you still get that full bourbon profile without it being diluted. And again, it's totally preference. John likes his cold. I like mine usually neat, if you will. That means up with nothing in it except just bourbon in your glass. But there are times where some of the bourbon you might buy every bottle, as you know, is slightly different. Maybe it's just a different year, or it's a less expensive bottle that hasn't aged as long. And sometimes having it chill will cut some of the spice or heat kind of out of it to make it a little bit smoother as you enjoy the bourbon.
Yeah, and when I started getting into bourbon, one of my first questions, I'm a newbie and trying to understand how you drink bourbon. And I'm like, this seems like a pretty basic question, but there's a lot of controversy around this, believe it or not, around whether you refrigerate your bourbon or not. Most things that I've bought, I typically refrigerate it. So I was looking around, and you can't kind of get a straight answer. Well, I'll give you the straight answer. Really, the straight answer is it's whatever you want. So if you like to, there's no wrong way to drink your bourbon. So if you like to refrigerate things, that's fine. It really does nothing for the flavor of the bourbon. It's not necessary to refrigerate the bourbon. The biggest thing when you store your bourbon that you got to think about is, right now we have these out in the sun, but if I'm storing my bourbon, I wouldn't want to be storing it out in the sun. Because the sun can really affect the flavor of the bourbon. You don't want to store your bourbon like on a windowsill where the sun's coming in right on you, right on the bourbon, because that will affect the flavor. You want to get it kind of like in a dark place at room temperature. But I really like refrigeration. Like when I drink water, I want it cold. I don't like drinking warm water. So at the same tone, I don't like drinking warm bourbon. Like it just doesn't taste good to me. It's just how I prefer it.
It's just not as good.
It's just not as good to me. So if I'm going to drink, like Eric was saying with Weller, I would drink it with these, pre-cold stones, because then it's not melting any water into the bourbon, but it's actually chilling it.
Right.
Wild Turkey, which I would say I would drink with the ice ball here, because it kind of melts into the Wild Turkey, and it just kind of helps with the flavor of it. So it just depends on the bourbon that you're drinking, and you just kind of have to experiment to see what's going to be best for you.
Right. I agree. I will say that John and I both do like to make old fashions and Manhattans. Those are probably two or three of, like, there's not many mixed drinks that I'll make with bourbon. I usually drink it straight. But the ice ball makes those drinks just top notch, because it allows for all the flavors to meld together, but it doesn't actually really take away by diluting smaller pieces of ice real fast. So with that, again, we're really not here to tell you which way is the correct way. It is one of those things where it's a little bit of self-discovery. John has decided by trying a few different ways how to drink his bourbon and how he prefers it, and I'm slightly different. So really, there's again, no wrong way to drink it.
Yeah, I think I found these things on Amazon. We can put a link in the description below for the ice cube.
Oh yeah, and we'll put those in for the rocks as well.
Ice rocks.
Definitely.
But I recommend, if you're a bourbon drinker, you should have both of those in your collection.
That's right. All right. Well, with that,
cheers.
Cheers.
And the moral of the story here is there's really no right or wrong way to drink your bourbon. It's just that you need to enjoy your bourbon.
That's right. Enjoy the bourbon.